So today, we are getting together to have conversations amongst ourselves, and it's an absolute great topic. The world changed for us about 14 months ago when ChatGPT entered the days and lives, and everyone started changing the way they think about AI. And so as BRMs, we need to take the lead, be able to drive that conversation forward. So that's the topic for today. As always, as BRMs, as a global community, we share this purpose to improve ourselves, our organizations, and our world by connecting relationships to results. And now let's turn it over. AI and BRM. The conversation pops up almost daily or multiple times a day here at the Institute, and we need to be able to understand and help equip and get into a dialogue around what it means for our community and how we change the conversation on the global scale. So this esteemed panel, we're going to open up for questions and talk through it, and I'll turn the camera and the mic over to Jasbir Kuner. Please, thank you.
Thank you so much, Daryl. It is so nice to be here with you all. We are very excited to start, and especially during BRM Week, to have a webinar like this is amazing. So we'll start with first introducing our most amazing panelists. Daryl, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. I don't think the first person needs an introduction, but maybe there's like a handful that don't know him. So Baz, did you want to start with introducing yourself first?
Thanks, Jasper. Great to be here. I've met many of you that I've seen coming in. Baz is the name for short. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. Background is a technology executive based out in South Africa for over 15 years. So been involved in software selection processes in retail, supply chain, and client services. So in that space, selecting software, looking at things like cloud implications and AI implications, headed up the BRM capability as well in that multinational organization, and have been involved in a number of BRM activities throughout the BRM community. So I'm excited to be here with my colleagues who are very knowledgeable on AI, and looking forward to the conversation. Thanks, Jasper.
Thanks so much, Baz. Next, we have Leila. Did you want to give a quick intro also?
Thank you, Jasper, and thank you for having me here. This is really great opportunity for me to be in touch with all of you. I became BRM 3 years ago, and this is really fascinating journey for me. As for myself, I am from Georgia, country of Georgia, Caucasus region. Originally, I am based now in Georgia. My background lays in healthcare, in IT, in construction. Lately, for the last 15 years, I'm doing international consulting in this area, specializing in project management, program management, and lately my passion become, since last 14 months, become AI, and I really got addicted to it. I get addicted to it so much that I'm just into learning, exploring, using it in my consulting. So I graduated from MIT AI program, executive program, from Oxford AI program. So I'm really enthusiastic, but I don't want to sound really hype and be on the wave, but be realistic how we can benefit out of it. So thank you for having me here.
Thanks so much, Leila. And next we have Jenny Owens from the US. Jenny, did you want to give a quick intro also?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Jenny Owens. I've been working at Cleveland Clinic for 12, almost 13 years. Most of that time spent using the BRM skill portfolio without actually holding the title of BRM. So I have a background in basic science, clinical research, and genomics. And then 4 years ago, I actually took the plunge and officially became a BRM. Since then, I have been pulled into helping implement AI projects and trying to think about how do we actually use AI in the highly regulated environment of healthcare. But I've also been really interested in AI for my own purposes. I think it's a really fascinating philosophical and technical area.
Thanks so much, Jenny. And I'll be your moderator today, Jasbir Cooner, located in Montreal, Canada. So we have a very diverse global webinar happening today. Before we started, Daryl, if you could go to the next slide. Before we start, I wanted to take a page from legendary coach Vince Lombardi's playbook. So before he began his first day of training camp, he always started off with, "Gentlemen, this is a football." And what that allowed the team to do was really align, go to page 1, set up a foundation, and really build the fundamentals on it. And for myself, I know I was kind of, last year we heard a lot about generative AI and AI. Everyone was speaking about it. And I thought it was something everyone was doing and everyone was playing around with it. But Salesforce actually came out with a survey for 2023. And it was noted that only 45% of the US population are using Gen AI right now. And 65% of that population are millennials and Gen Z. When we look at that from a global aspect of the workforce, millennials and Gen Z make less than 50% of the global population that are working. So we have about half of the workforce that is not using Gen AI. So 70% of the individuals that are not using it, they said that they would like to use it, and they just don't have enough information. So before we got into the panels and the questions, just wanted to set base that Gen AI is a subset of AI. And what it does is it creates content. So it does learn from large data sets, and it can recognize patterns, styles, and structures. As well as what it does is it creates content such as text, images, videos, music. So pretty much what humans were doing before, we're able to really tap in and be able to do that via prompts with Gen AI. So what we'll do now is we'll move to the panel with the first question. And Leila, if you could start with, how are you using AI in your current job today?
Well, I would go with what Daryl just mentioned, that BRM affects individuals, organizations, and global. So to answer that question, actually, these large language models, these generative AIs, affected not only my work space, also individual development, as well as my family planning. And I want to go through each of them from my practical standpoint. At work, I will give you one story, which is, it sounds like like joke, but usually me and my husband, we share our calendars to plan our days. And I have my business calendar shared with him. The first time, I don't know how many of you are using Otter AI for the note generations. Anybody using Otter AI? So it is actually automatic meeting minute generator, as well as action item generations, so on and so on. So the first day I installed the Otter, I had shared my calendar with my husband, and I received the call from my husband, "You are in my meeting. Do you know that?" I was like, "What?" So he said, "Yes, you are literally in my meeting with your name tag, but you are not showing up and not talking. So can you just leave my meeting?" And I was, "No, I'm not in the meeting. I'm in different space." So what happened that I have not set up the setting of Otter AI. So it entered my husband's calendar and my husband's meeting and started recording the meeting. So why I'm telling it? It is very useful, but we have to be familiar how to set up and how to get the most of the benefit of it. So be careful, but be also just mindful about it. At work, how do I use it? I use it with emails, with summarization of the big text about the new statistics. So it really is my assistant as a BRM. And we all get these needs, requirements, the requests. And you, as a human being, sometimes your thoughts are in different places and you forget. If you, for example, I use Notion quite a lot. If I put something in Notion and I use AI, it is just in minutes tracks in the calendar. So at work, I use it as my consultant as well to have an analysis of the pros and cons. At my private, productivity side, I always plan and schedule my learning path with it. It is very useful. And last, and we will digest more, I will let my colleagues to also give their examples. I also even plan my weekly meal and shopping lists nowadays with AI.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Layla. That's really amazing. How about you, Bas? How have you been using it?
Thanks, Jasper. It's an amazing cross-section of use there, Leila. And I think from my side, a lot of those kinds of things. I think that the two or three areas, for me, the first thing is time. It's to save time. And so what I do is I use AI to form drafts, draft emails, draft cover letters. So I typically don't enjoy that so much. So I can take maybe 20 to 30 minutes to put an email draft together and then perfect it. But with AI, you can have those generated for you within a minute. So you can save up to 10, 20 minutes an email. And so it's time saving for me. And I've managed to, when under pressure, use AI to really create artifacts quite quickly. The other thing that I use it for, I was mentioning earlier, I use a conversational AI assistant. So I'm not sure if anybody's used or heard of Pi, Pi as in the number Pi, Pi AI. And it's a conversational AI assistant, and it basically talks to you. It's similar to ChatGPT, but you can actually talk to it. So what I use that for is to bounce ideas. You can choose the voice. It's a male or female voice. You get a wide variety of choices. And so, I've used Pi, for instance, to help me troubleshoot a problem that I was having in Outlook. And Pi actually spoke me through, go to options, go to this point, select that. And actually something where I would have had to maybe call a Microsoft call center in the US, that could have taken hours. I found the way through it in literally minutes. So that's quite a nice thing. And then as an entrepreneur, if you're a solopreneur and you're talking you don't have a partner to bounce an idea off, also conversational AI, what are your thoughts on this? And I've seen a number of people using that conversational AI, to figure out a business venture or how to take something forward. And then lastly, just involved in communities, there's a community starting up in the US to democratize AI. And I've recently joined that, and it's called Kwai. It's a South African word, actually, Kwai, Kwaai, Kwai.ai. So that's an AI community that's looking at democratizing AI and shifting it in the right direction. So those are some of the uses for AI, and a big part of it is time saving for me. That's it. Thanks,
Awesome.
Jasper.
Thank you so much, Baz. And how about you, Jenny?
So I, like Michelle Kaiser has called out in the chat, our institution has put pretty strict guardrails around the tools that we're able to use and install on our work computers. So I am a heavy user of our Cleveland Clinic approved ChatGPT instance. So this is one that we've used for and made safe for patient information, but that's not the way that I use it. So my use of ChatGPT is primarily for thinking. I'm a very verbal thinker. I think best when I am in communication, and it's not really fair of me to hold somebody else hostage and make them listen to my thinking process, right? If you've done software development, right? I'm a big rubber ducker, right? Like I have to say things out loud or type them to somebody else, and ChatGPT is the perfect partner for that. I also use it when I'm planning out my communications to my business partners. So if I have done like some thinking about what is it that I want this communication to really say, what do I want my audience to know, what do I want them to think and feel, and what do I want them to do, I can take that and chuck it into ChatGPT and say, give me a 3-paragraph email that will hit these main points, and then I have the draft that I can then edit and trim as needed. The last way that I use generative AI in my work is actually for my side, a side project that I run on a podcast that I run on healthcare data and ethics. And really there where I use it is for accessibility. So if I record a 15-minute video of me blathering about whatever it is of my topic of the week is, I can use then Gen AI to generate a transcript. I can use it to, in theory, I can use it to select clips from that video for social media use, although I am still tuning this function and I haven't gotten it to the where I'm really happy with it yet.
Thanks so much, Jenny. For myself, I just read a stat that it says that individuals that are using generative AI are 40% more productive than they were before. And speaking to my boss yesterday, he's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't sign into ChatGPT." And I was like, "I can't go back to who I was before ChatGPT." And I was speaking to someone and they had said kickstarting creativity. And that's how they had pretty much said that they were using it. And that's kind of tapping into what all of you had said, right? Where it kind of helps you with that first step, and then you could take it in the direction that you want. So I think the second question I would love to hear is what were some of the challenges you experienced when you first started to use AI, generative AI? For myself, I know prompting was quite hard at the beginning, where I thought I was doing a good prompt, but when the output came, I was like, this isn't what I'm asking for. And instead of reprompting it, I used to take it out and try to figure it out on my own. So now I'm more into a reprompting aspect and learning more about that. Baz, did you want to start off with answering what your challenges were when you first started?
Sure. I mean, I'll give a practical example of what happened to me recently. I was interacting with a chatbot, and was looking at how I could use it in my day-to-day, and the chatbot recommended certain things that I could do in Outlook, and then the chatbot said, "Sure, I can help you. I can do this for you." And I can integrate and I can create artifacts for you, and I can be like a secretary for you, etc. And so I dealt with the chatbot and tried to integrate into Outlook, and I couldn't find out. And I thought maybe it said if you've got iOS and you're Apple user, you should be fine. But if you're Microsoft, you've got a problem. So I thought, okay, I'm not an Apple user. So I contacted support, and support said to me, that the chatbot actually hallucinates from time to time. So we apologize for the convenience, but it makes things up. So the AI actually it blows itself up and it makes itself look good. And as a personal user, you've got to be so careful of that. Those are those AI bloopers or hallucinations, as the support person called it, that we can get ourselves into so much trouble trusting this technology. And I think that's on a personal basis. And we'll talk later about on an organizational basis. It's that problem times 1,000 that as executives we need to be looking out for, because our entire workforce is exposed to it, and we have responsibilities as executives to make sure that we don't make that mistake for an organization. So those are some of the challenges at a personal and an organizational level that are important.
And how about you, Jenny? What challenges have you faced?
So just displaying a little bit of self-knowledge here, right? I think the primary challenge to my use of AI in my regular work as a BRM was personal. I'm very conservative. I'm very privacy-minded, and I really did not like the idea of throwing my thoughts and my mental process and any of my work stuff into a system that I didn't understand and couldn't control. This is definitely heavily flavored by the fact that I kept up with a lot of the science on neural nets, right? And so I would often share, like the garbled recipes that a neural net would try to generate, where you're throwing like a whole can of condensed, sweetened condensed milk plus like a bunch of maraschino cherries and some raw beef into a bowl, and like that's dinner. So carrying over old prejudices and not being aware of the true power of the technology was a hurdle. And then when I sat down and I actually started to play with it, I my husband and I were actually using it as like a way to fine tune a car search, right? Something really innocuous, not very sensitive. And I got really excited about it. So then the next day I tried to go and use it to help me find some academic sources for a paper I was researching. And of course, you know, the Gen AI performs particularly poorly when it comes to academic sources and citations. It hallucinates them with a high degree of confidence. And so I went through and I was fact checking, and like, sure enough, you know, 90% of these sources that it had given me were made up. So a combination of my previous misconceptions, understanding what the tool does and doesn't do well, right? It is not a one size fits all tool. And if you ask it to perform well in an area where it can hallucinate and doesn't frequently get called on it, that's not an area where it's going to perform really well. But then understanding what I can and cannot do with it and where it really does perform powerfully, that was the final hurdle that really got me much more comfortable.
And what about you, Leila?
Since my colleagues already talked about the hallucinations that happens, I think, less than it was happening at the beginning of all this ChatGPT. It is improving, we can say. I would highlight two cases that happened with me with AI in organizations concerning the biases that AI may have. One is concerning the HR. For example, one client of mine, they are implementing HR program for the initial screening. And what they did, they selected the top performance, 200 employees, and feed the information about the required skills, preferable skills, knowledge background, and etc., about the age, about the gender, you name it, all the data that is available in HR about the employees. And the initial screening revealed the biases that AI has developed, because out of, for example, 200 employees, only 40 were women. And when screening the CVs which were coming to the system were automatically only admitting the CVs of only 40% of the women. So we have to be very careful with the biases that the data is providing, not intentionally, not thought initially, but it happens that whatever data we are feeding, it generates those biases. The second example happened at my university. I also teach project management, change management at 2 universities. And in one university, we wanted to have this student selection initial process automated with AI. And the same happened with the origin of the person who was applying. So, for example, we had more applicants before from the Caucasus region, and the AI thought that it is preferable to have and give preference to those candidates who are coming from this region. So those biases are really something we have to look for and be careful of.
Thank you so much, Leila. We actually have a question from Gary, and I could not agree with him more. He's talking about how fast everything is moving with AI and just being able to learn it, which is something I've experienced. I feel good, go to sleep, wake up the next day, and all of a sudden there's something new that happens, and all of a sudden you're on that learning curve again. So what Gary is asking is, what are some of the ways you found effective for keeping on top of good info about reliable AI tools and the topic in general? Jenny, did you want to start with how you keep on top of stuff?
Sure. I think the first answer is never sleep, right? That's obviously step one. Who
needs sleep?
So, I just dropped a book recommendation in the chat. So I do think that it helps to keep up with AI news on multiple fronts in multiple forms of media. So I have been a little reluctant to engage too deeply with some of the published materials, just because of the time lag that it takes to get a book from, you know, writing it all the way to a physical copy you can hold in your hands or have on your Kindle, right? By the time that information gets to you, it is a little bit stale. But in addition to reading print books, I also subscribe to a couple of Substacks that I find really useful. And I like to keep those outside of my area of interest, right? So I don't subscribe to Substacks on healthcare AI. I subscribe to Substacks on self-driving cars. because that helps me keep abreast of the field as a whole and understand where, if there are leading problems, right, in the other areas of AI, how might this impact our individual fields and AI? I have a lot more thoughts, but I'll let the rest of the panel discuss as well.
Definitely. And Baz, did you want to continue with some of the thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think, it's what Jenny said is really important, and I think sleep is also underrated. But I think that as BRMs, that's a big question for us, because often we're not just finding out for ourselves. We obviously want to find out because we want to know about AI. But as BRMs, we have a responsibility to the organization, and we have a role in the organization. We're not necessarily the AI architect or the AI product lead or the AI person in business, but we're the person that's connecting all of them. And often, our knowledge needs to be, a certain, not as deep as the architects, but it needs to be very wide. We need to be able to connect all of these people. So that does, in a way, take a bit of pressure off us to have to know every single thing. But we've got to stay on top of the trends. And if you think of things like the Gartner hype cycle, which as executives we watch very carefully, 5 years ago, cloud and cybersecurity was all the rage, and you needed to know everything and stay on top of it. AI is in that space now. So a lot of it is hype. And what you then need to do is you need to understand what is hype and what is not. And those are some of the higher level themes that you need to understand as a BRM, as an executive. You don't necessarily need to know every single detail because you're not always the specialist. You're the BRM. That's just bringing it into the BRM space.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Baz. And Layla, for you, if you could go a bit specific, because earlier you had said you create a learning path through generative AI, and would be more interested to get a better understanding of how you're able to do that.
Okay. Your initial question was how you keep up with this phase, and I'm not keeping up. I'm sorry, but I'm always behind. It's impossible. This simple, but we know that we are behind. I am behind, but we know that we have to keep up. The learning path. I have my discipline rules, and I always try to kind of convey it at my workplace, at my BRM place, and when I do the consulting. So it's just time blocking, as everybody does in their workday, and the discipline. Learning path is, as usually, you have where you want to be. And it includes, as my colleagues mentioned, you don't have to know the Python. Even though I'm learning Python right now, and the next my learning path is to learn the Java, but I have to understand the language. Because as a BRM, as a consultant, I have to know the language. For example, currently I'm working on one project in energy sector where the programmers were explaining to me what benefits each data can bring and what predictions they can put on the table. But the customer, who was the C-suite level, they didn't understand the techniques of the Python, and really very basic knowledge of Python really helped me to translate. I was just a translator, translating one thought to another and delivering it, and it was very, very helpful. So the path to carve is just set certain time daily. For example, I have 2 hours daily set up for specific podcasts, book specific, and few people who are influencers. And actually, I especially use LinkedIn, and Jasper may put some of the link that I follow the YouTube, which I trust, but it doesn't mean I really like what Jennifer said. I also try to come out from my comfort zone and where I feel myself, this is my area, but find the inspiration and new things from the different areas, like artists. like I don't know, singers. I'm looking for the different perspectives, and it really gives the boost for the creativity. Then you can easily connect the dots.
Thank you so much, Leila. We actually have Martin that posed a question where sometimes when you're working with within AI, because it's so new, no one really knows. Well, I'm saying it's new because for the general population, it's been around since like the 70s, 80s. So what happens, like how have you been able to close that gap between the individuals within your company that are using generative AI and those that aren't? Are you kind of trying to help from the BRM role to get the others on board? Or are you kind of leaving that more for a leadership role for someone else to do? So how have you been able to really work on that closing the gap aspect? Baz, did you want to start with that question? I hope it was clear.
So the question is, as a BRM, how do we help bridge the gap? People that are starting to use AI in the organization, get them more involved. And I think there, as BRMs, we are a point of focus. We're a point of focus for relationships. So we are amongst people all the time. We're in those conversations with various people. So we can share knowledge. So typically we're going to people, we're talking to them about techniques of how they can connect better with people. And we're seeing all these things that we're talking about. And we can share that knowledge in discussion with the various, whether it's technology, engineers or executives or project managers, we can share that knowledge. So we almost, we're spreading the love, so to speak, in terms of what the specifics of AI are and bringing more people into the fold. So, I see it as a point of focus.
Thank you so much, Baz. And how about you, Jenny? How have you been able to really close that gap?
So at this point, given the regulatory and the I don't know, the cybersecurity concerns about widespread use of AI, my job is to say, here's how I can use it safely, right? And I think that maybe leading by example and explaining like, okay, so obviously we're not going to, use this use case where we're feeding my entire Outlook, archive into an AI and it's going to spit back, my next few action items and set up a bunch of meetings for me. But, I can use it safely and effectively in this way. And I think drawing the conversation way down to the tactical level has been helpful for me so that we're not trying to chew through all of the implications of AI at once. We're trying to chew through, help me write a single email and make sure that I get it right.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And Leila, you seem to be frozen. Not sure if you could connect with us.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's awesome. So how about on your end, Leila? How have you been able to close that gap?
Actually, it's a very interesting question. I don't know if you have watched the live streaming from Davos World Economic Forum that was just recently was going in Switzerland. I actually watched almost every panel discussion, and it turned out to be not economic forum, but it turned out to be AI forum, because everybody who participated on this forum was talking only about AI. So, but the theme that I really noticed in almost every panel discussion, when we talk about the gap and reskill, upskill need, it turned out that the biggest need and gap is in education of the C-suite level in AI. This turned out to be the highest pain point, because it turns out usually the revolutions and any big changes are coming from top to down. It turns out that the lower level employees are starting using ChatGPT, the generative AI, even there are some restrictions. And it was even discussed that it may be the one revolution which is coming from bottom up, not from the C-suite. So there is the gap for not upskill or reskill of the management or lower level specialists, but the specifically C-suite level who really understand and connect the dots of AI. So how do I close that gap? I'm not. closing it as in the previous, but I try to work it out by discussing and showing the practical benefits. The practice, because wherever you are explaining in theory, it's always show me in practice, show me how it works, show me how I am getting it and how my teams are benefiting, how projects are benefiting. So then you just start by showing it. Just show and piloting, as Jennifer mentioned, bit by bit, not go with the big projects, but with small steps. And I start with C-suite, always with this discussion.
I know from our end, we're very much having a lot of conversations around AI because it comes with a cost. And there needs to be a budget for that. And because this is quite new, it's kind of, all right, now quantify this. If we do get Microsoft Copilot or we do this and we go through our security and everything, how do I justify the extra I'm paying for the license with, you know, how much that person's going to benefit, because it's really hard at this point to quantify that. So Jack asked a great question and he said, can you talk more about what business opportunities, benefits, as well as risks that they are facing? Baz, did you want to start off with that question?
Yeah, I think as usual, Jack, great question. And it's really an important, it's part of the hype that I spoke about earlier on. What we've seen with AI is sometimes generative AI isn't the place that we want to start. What we've done is in our architectural process, we've actually looked at where is the business benefit, got all the various players together, the architects, the business people, the technology leaders, and then understand what is the actual problem we're trying to solve, and then what is the potential benefit to the organization, and work at it as, you know, like an architectural review board. The BRM is part of that structure. And then actually your answer might be, it's not generative AI. You know, in some cases it's robotic process automation. It's bots to just take away some of the processes, like in a call center or in a finance process. And actually that's where you want to start. So we've got to listen to all the voices in the organization and understand some of those benefits through working through you know, structured processes, because the risk is that if we buy into the hype, and I've seen this with a lot of organizations, and I've seen it with software coming in, you buy into the hype and you actually go and spend millions of dollars on technology that is actually not meeting the organization's needs, and that's where the risk is.
And for that, Baz, I read a stat saying a lot of the current AI projects that companies have put in the last 2 to 3 years, a lot of them, because the output, the data is not good, the output's not good. So we have more and more AI projects that are failing, and it's being blamed on the AI system, whereas it's all about the data that goes in. And that's where Layla had touched on prior, saying we need to make sure our data is not racist, sexist, you know, the way that humans have been acting for the past so long, right? Is what the AI machine is putting out. And there was also a funny stat where they said we're more harsh with robots than we are with humans. So if a human does something wrong, we're more empathetic to the human and saying, oh, that's okay. But if a robot outputs that with data, we're like, oh my God, this robot, like this AI system sucks or something, you know, it's not doing it right. So we're much harsher on that end than we are from the human end. So Jenny, how about from your end, what would you say are the business opportunities, benefits, and risks?
So I would just echo what Baz mentioned, you know, and say for any situation where we're saying, oh, we could get in a Gen AI to do this, I think taking it several steps back and trying to put our finger on, okay, well, what is the problem that we're trying to solve here? And so for, you know, like for example, you know, to keep us on topic, for, you know, tools that we're using in our BRM, you know, day jobs, I'm thinking about, you know, meeting notes and things like that. Looking at the amount of time you spend on administrative tasks that can be automated without, I can't say without risk, with minimal risk to your organization is a really good place to start. Not only because it does free you up to be more productive, but it also has a large like morale boost, right? And then you've got, you can use this to sort of flip hearts and minds on the usefulness of AI. I do think it's important when we're talking about risks is to remember that not only can our data itself can be, racist, sexist, can display and propagate inequalities, but it's also going to reflect the bias inherent in the system. And so if you want to grapple with using AI in ways that are on like a population level, not on an individual level, you really do need to be quite careful about how you are correcting and making sure that you're going to recognize, output that's going to further inequality and how you will recognize output that will not further inequality as you're thinking about these.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And how about you, Leila? What would be your answer to Jack's question?
Definitely, and this is undoubted that there are several and lots of opportunities and benefits of Gen AI, and there are risks. However, we fear those risks. We know that in this competitive world, people, organizations, and countries will be using Gen AI differently, and it will give the competitive edge to organizations, teams, and so on. So I always envisioned something that is unavoidable, and in this case, I see it as unavoidable. It's better for individuals, for organizations to learn the opportunities that Gen AI and AI in general can bring, so we can control it better. So even though even scientists, they don't know what to expect in future in 10 years from AI, we still have to be aware how it is working or not working. What I mean by that, we as an individual have to develop skill of interacting with it and knowing at an individual level how to practice and how to communicate with it and what to expect. So in theory, when we talk about those stuff, we are aware about them. But at work, in practice, it sounds a little bit different because it is already skilled to communicate with AI. So I believe we have to start using AI and develop skill of communicating with Gen AI and using AI. And this is the skill that starts with each of us individually, and then work in teams and with organizations. Be aware, as we do risk management in every aspect. Yeah, have those risks, but not just distance yourself. So I know it has biases, I know it has risks, and it has hallucinations. We cannot stop using. It's here and it's evolving. So we better know how to talk with it, right?
Thank you, Leila. I love that, the fact that it's not going anywhere. So it's on us to make sure that we get on terms with it. So, they say when you're having fun, time flies, and we're pretty much up on the hour, close to it, but I'm going to sneak in one last question to you all. So if you could give one piece of advice for everyone that's on the webinar today, what would that be concerning AI and BRM? Jenny, did you want to start?
Oh, sure. So one piece of advice, figure out what your position is on AI and BRM, or your position on AI tools in general, and then go and seek out reading or podcasts or YouTube videos that not only agree with you, but that disagree with you. You should purposefully irritate yourself in the service of education, and you got to seek out opposing perspectives, because otherwise you will not be able to understand where other people in your organization are coming from.
Thank you so much, Jenny. And how about you, Leila? What piece of advice would you give?
My advice will sound not very technical, but my advice after talking with my Oxford colleagues, MIT colleagues, we have to start being more human. What it means that we have to work with our teams, with our colleagues more more and talk about AI, help them to reskill, and we cannot go along with and cannot keep up with this speed unless we are in it together. So I still I want to repeat the saying that is quite often is mentioned in the internet, that it is not the AI will replace you, but the people who will not know how to use it. So it means that if we want to be really human, we have to help our teams in our organization to reskill and upskill and be in line with the AI trends. So this is my advice.
Thank you so much, Leila. And how about you, Baz? What piece of advice?
I think that, just based on everything that I've heard today, the key thing for me is, as BRMs, whether we're in the formal role or whether we're executives acting as BRMs or project managers, whatever that role may be, embrace AI. I feel that if we don't embrace AI, it's going to make us less relevant. And a lot of people in our organizations are going to be in that space. We don't need to be the experts, but we need to know enough to have the conversation. So find out what you need to know in sessions such as these. Some of the information Leila is going to give, or that Jasper will send through. Find out what you need to know so that you can interact with everyone in that space. And there's been a lot of things in the chat around, age and that kind of thing. There is a bit of a barrier. You might say, I'm not comfortable with this type of technology. I'm too old or whatever, but you're not. Just get in touch with it. And the more that you are, the more that you'll start to feel comfortable in that space. So, find the space for you, know enough, and get involved.
Thank you so much, Baz. And that is it pretty much for our webinar today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It's been great to talk to you all, and the panelists. Thank you for all your knowledge. It's I've learned so much from all of you today too. And I'll pass it now to Daryl for the closing.